Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. Great program today. Kaylie Reynolds is with me. She works with youth as part of the Youth and Family Division of the YMCA. It's a wonderful story, great work that they do, so you're going to want to hear about it. Kaylie Reynolds, Good Life is next. Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. So glad you joined us. And wherever you are, we encourage you to check out goodlifetelevision.org, goodlifetelevision.org, where you can see all the full interviews as well as what we call power clips, which are some of the great moments from those interviews. So goodlifetelevision.org is where you can find us. I'm really excited about my guest today. Kaylie Reynolds is with me. Welcome, Kaylie.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So Kaylie, I have to look at this for your title because it's a little bit long, but you, for Youth and Family Services, you're the Transitional Age Youth Programs Director.
Correct.
And so you work, I want to talk about that in a second. We'll get into kind of the work you do, but tell us a little bit about growing up and kind of where you came from and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I am from a suburb outside of Chicago, Illinois called Elgin, and grew up, born and raised there until 18 with my parents and siblings. I loved it there, but I grew up coming to California. My grandparents lived on the West Coast, so when it came to becoming independent and deciding where I wanted to be, the beach is what called my name. So it's a matter of where and what beach to be on, and Santa Barbara is where I've called home ever since.
Okay. And you mentioned here you've kind of hit the trifecta in terms of schools in Santa Barbara, City College, UCSB, and Antioch.
Yeah.
Talk about your road kind of in the local schools here.
Absolutely. So I say I went through the tour of Santa Barbara schools. I started at City College and did the 2 years to get my general educations as well as gain residency here in California, and then transferred into UCSB with the TAG program, and immediately went into the psychology program and majored in psych. Graduating, I took about 2 years off and then fell into where I wanted to go to grad school, which landed at Antioch. And completed that program in 3 years and have been happy.
There you
are.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking earlier about you're a rare person in that at 18 years old, you really knew where you wanted to go. And it says here that you had a very distinct goal for a career path, which was to become a counselor for at-risk youth. Where did that come from? Your interest in this, your focus? Because a lot of 18-year-olds don't have a clue, frankly, or certainly an idea of what their career path is going to be. But you did. Talk about that.
So I really wanted to be an attorney early on, and I think that's because I was really good at arguing my point and getting my point across. And it wasn't until I took a psychology class in high school that I learned you could be a voice for someone without arguing for them, and actually being a place to listen and a safe place for them to really express and find their own voice. And I had a friend that really shared her experiences and her history with abuse and some of the traumas she had gone through, and that was nothing like I'd ever experienced or knew about. I was very lucky in that aspect, and we used to talk about her opening a place that kids could go where they could be safe, and where I would be the person that they could talk to and find that safe voice and kind of figure out the next steps. And so I knew I wanted that really early on, and it's great. Yeah.
Listening, that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more important than speaking for them, and I think it took me a little bit to learn that you don't have to talk to someone for them to have a voice.
That's a really well said. Interesting. What I wrote down here as I was reading about you is I wrote down compassion is a really good thing. I don't know, it's kind of random, but compassion in today's world is so important. And I think in the work that you do, one of the things I was wondering about is you came in with this heart for at-risk youth and to be a listener and to Is it hard when you see it over and over again to remain hopeful, compassionate, to not grow cynical or kind of the routine of it? Because you're doing this for a living, which I think in these types of fields and social services, I think that there can be a high burnout because it's tough work. I mean, it's not easy.
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about this as a career path and how you've kind of retained your compassion and your hopefulness.
I mean, I think you just said it. It's definitely not easy. It takes a lot of self-care, a lot of being open and processing with myself and my clinical supervisor. I've always had a really great team and great supervisors, great clinical supervisors to rely on, bounce things back off of, and know that I'm not alone doing this. I work with clients a lot one-on-one or run programs individually and have for a long time, but I'm not alone and I have a big support system, and so I think that's what's been really important, and I rely on my outside support system. I've got great roommates and friends and family, and it's more rewarding than it is bad.
Huh.
Yeah.
And do you get to see, I mean, how, like, and we'll talk about the mechanics of kind of how these programs work, because I learned a lot about that, but are you able to kind of follow people, I mean, in terms of outcomes or where they end up, or are you able to kind of know where people go from you and from the transitional environment to wherever they end up?
Sometimes. Definitely not all the time, which is probably the hardest part of the job, is potentially seeing someone one day and not seeing them and next and not knowing what's happened, right. Especially after building relationships or rapport with some of the youth. But a lot of times they come back, they resurface to check in, they come back to town and want to reach out. We get letters in the mail, thank you cards. And so, I mean, even though we don't know where a lot of them go, I have a hope that it's mostly good places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little about where you work and kind of, so for people who may not know, talk about what is Noah's Anchorage. Just talk about Noah's Anchorage to start, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah, so Noah's Anchorage is one of the 4 programs that make up Youth and Family Services through the YMCA, and it's a youth crisis shelter for youth 12 to 17 and their families to be able to come in and get crisis mediation, support from counselors, after-school support. There's short-term residential services where they can stay up to 90 days pending need and circumstance, where counselors are all trained and work with the youth and families to safely reunify. Safety is the biggest concern at Noah's, and so it's a safe place for youth and families to be able to go and get support when they may feel like they're at their loss, at their end.
And so what's a typical situation that shows up?
I could say it's anything from a youth being scared to go home because they've got bad grades on a test and not knowing how a parent might react, or a parent not really understanding, or if during COVID, how to keep their kid in the house and keep them safe, and feeling like they're at their wits' end and potentially just needing that bit of cool off and that bit of reprieval so that they can come back together with that calm mindset and work with a counselor, practicing effective listening skills and work towards a common solution, getting them home safely.
So it's a place for cooling off.
Yeah. Cooling off, and for youth to go and feel safe, feel like they can be themselves, feel less pressure, no judgment, get their needs met.
And then talk about My Home.
So My Home is a transitional living program that provides intensive case management focused on independent living skills. And so that's geared towards really helping youth entering adulthood, 18 to 25, find housing resources, secure, safe, stable, permanent housing, which is really hard at a young age, especially if you don't have a background or a positive background. We work on employment skills, resume building, education support, financial assistance, and pretty much any other independent adult skill that they need support on.
And then so talk about your role in terms of as the Transitional Age Youth Programs Director. What all does that entail in terms of how you're involved?
So I oversee the My Home program as well as participate as a case manager for that program working with the youth. And then I also oversee our conjunctional street outreach program, which works both with NOAA's Anchorage as well as the My Home program. And that program is really, we have staff that are going out on the streets and providing street-based services to youth, locating them, providing basic needs, water bottles, granola bars, hygiene supplies, and letting them get connected to services that way. And then we have a drop-in center part of that program where youth can come in and get that same support services 7 days a week.
I wondered this as I was reading about you, what are the numbers in terms of, are there more young people on the streets than we might imagine or
100%.
think?
So youth don't present the same way that adults do as homeless. They have the ability to seem a little bit more hidden. They can couch surf with friends sneak them in through their windows, and then out in the morning before parents are seeing them. They're able to potentially crash in a car and seem a little bit more unnoticed than an adult. And so they're definitely out, and there's definitely more of them than we anticipate because there's not encampments of youth towns the way we see adult homeless populations. And so the numbers are actually high. I know this year we had an increase of 28% of more homeless youth receiving services in Santa Barbara during the point in time count.
Really?
Those numbers I don't believe are out and publicized yet, but it was a very dramatic increase of youth receiving services throughout the county.
Wow. And what do you attribute that to?
So I think that they're being tracked by services right now because with COVID, they really need to be reaching out, and so more service providers are connecting with youth in different ways than before. Prior to COVID, there were a lot of in-person requirements where youth had to be or show up to checkpoints or show up to physical locations, and now with COVID there's been a lot more phone services, online applications, and things that have allowed youth to get involved with services where maybe they wouldn't have before.
So that's a good thing.
It is a good thing. A lot more youth are being connected. It's scary to know how many more youth there are, but it's great to know that they're getting connected.
And how long has this Youth and Family Services or this part of the YMCA been around? Has it been around a long time?
It has been around a very long time. Noah's Anchorage used to actually be called Klein Bottle, and was taken over by Youth and Family Services. So they took that over in 2001, and so it's been Noah's ever since.
And you mentioned in here a client, kind of an example of a client. But talk us through kind of an example of a client and what like what this write-up is. Kind of give us an example of a client a little bit about what the average or a particular situation, background, what they received, and then where they end up.
So unfortunately, I was supposed to have a guest here. His name was Milo, and he was a former participant and is now a current staff and has welcomed me to share his story since he's not here to do that. And so he started with Noah's as a 17-year-old boy, receiving crisis services and residential services, and really getting connected to a support system in that realm. He didn't have family in the area that was super reliable. He had come down to be independent and go to City College and just wasn't making it on his own. And so he found Noah's and started receiving services there. When he turned 18, he started working with our outreach program and was able to get connected to a lot of different services, get his basic needs met. He had personal property storage, do laundry, and really work on just building like his resume and case management criteria, he was able to find housing, but it just wasn't the most reliable or stable of situations. So he was on the wait list for my home and to be connected with housing that way, which eventually he was. Milo was one of the participants that entered a pilot program we had where we opened a shared house on the Mesa for transitional age youth, so 18 to 25-year-olds. We had a male bedroom and a female bedroom, and so he lived there for about 6 months. It was a fantastic pilot program. Unfortunately, the donor went a different direction with that house. So Milo moved out and found his own apartment and has been independently living successfully ever since, working as a manager at a hotel and now working with us as an outreach worker and kind of completing that full circle of support services.
How old is he now?
He's 21.
21.
Yeah.
That is great. So when you say outreach, so I mean, do you have people out on the streets?
Yes.
Trying to locate?
Yeah, so we have staff that walk specified routes through downtown Santa Barbara as well as Isla Vista, where we are walking and building rapport with youth on the street, mostly just sharing the word about the program and references. And then if there are youth that look or identify as homeless or state that they need those services, we have supplies in our backpack, lots of referrals. We carry an iPad to do necessary assessments and things right there with them. And then we always invite them back to the drop-in center for any other support that they might need while we get them connected to whatever resources they're looking for.
Wow. So you're going to them. Because one of my questions was going to be, how do they find you? But one of the ways is you find them.
Yeah, we try to do a little bit of both. So we definitely are out looking for them, and then we're doing a ton of outside community outreach, working with other community programs, the schools, and yeah, spreading the word that way to be able to get those referrals.
That's amazing. And I saw that you did have a donor. There was a major renovation that was done. So your work is something that donors can support?
Yes, absolutely.
How do they do that?
So if you go to the Youth and Family Services webpage, there is a donation link there that you are able to donate and provide any services there. We also have access on our Facebook page. Currently we are in the middle, or we just began our staff campaign season. So our Facebook, Instagram will start having different stories and postings and ways to give to our staff campaign, but we accept donations year long. So it's not just during this time.
So it's Youth and Family Services.
Youth and Family Services through the Channel Islands YMCA.
Channel Islands YMCA. So what would the handle be on Facebook or Instagram or?
It is I think it's Santa Barbara Youth and Family Services on Facebook. I think it's also Santa Barbara Youth and Family Services on Instagram.
Santa Barbara Youth and Family Services. Okay.
And then, yeah.
And then so donors could access you through any of those vehicles and they can give that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing I wrote down here is there's nothing more important on earth than helping hurting and lost people. I think that there's such a reward that you can experience when you're helping hurting people. But talk about the most rewarding parts of your job. We talked a little about the challenges. It's not easy what you do, but what are the more rewarding aspects?
I mean, I would say from a my home perspective, one of the most rewarding aspects is seeing a youth open the door to their apartment for the first time and knowing that they seeing that sense of relief, right, of feeling safety and that sense of security, that bit of knowing that they can finally relax and know they're home and have that bit of routine. At Noah's, I think it's knowing youth feel safe and are really finding their voice, are able to express themselves with their family in a way that is healthy and that helps both of them achieve what they're looking for as a family unit and a family system. You see more smiles than you do tears, I would say, by the end of the day. And so I think that is the most rewarding portion. Yeah.
Yeah, I've read a little bit of research about the whole housing first kind of principle and as it relates to homelessness in general, and how and I've had this experience a little bit in the multifamily housing world of it's amazing what a roof can do. You know, it's amazing what can happen when somebody has shelter, like what you described, you know, safety, or I can take a deep breath, you know, I have a place to live. I have, that's a powerful thing, isn't it? I mean,
it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it seems like it's hard to get somebody to maybe look at other things or address other things until that's taken care of. But when that's taken care of, it seems like it opens the door to, okay, now I can look at this and I can look at that. But I mean, are you understanding what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it definitely allows for that to really transpire when they have that housing first, to be able to then think about their employment, then think about what they want, because they can go to bed and they know where they're waking up and going to sleep. And I feel like knowing that every day is the most important thing. And I think a lot of times they have drive for those other things potentially first. School, employment. I mean, if you can't have a house without being able to pay for it. So they have this like drive to do more, but without housing, it really makes it hard to be successful in the other areas.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So so just to reset, so my guest is Kaylie Reynolds. She's works in transitional age youth programs as the transitional age youth programs director at the Family and Youth and Family Services. I'm trying to get all this right, which is kind of a division of the YMCA. So there are 4 core programs then in Youth and Family Services.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And so we've addressed, I think, 2 of them. Noah's Anchorage and My Home.
The third one is the street outreach program
that
we've talked about. Okay. And then our 4th one is the St. George Youth Center. And
talk about that. I was going to ask you about that.
So that is our 4th program, and it is located out in the heart of Isla Vista, and it supports youth 5th through 12th grade and has after-school enrichment programs. Right now they're doing a Get Up and Go series where there's after-school pods from Monday through Thursday. So they're either Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, where youth are able to do outdoor activities that are structured and supported. And outside of COVID, we normally have, class after-school tutoring. We have parenting groups. They've done leadership programs for youth, emergency preparedness training for youth, and so it's a really great program out in Ivy where there's so many young youth in Isla Vista, and it's such a college town, so they are privy to seeing so much more at such a young age, and so it really gives them a safe place and where they can go and be kids and not necessarily be engulfed in that early adult lifestyle.
That is great.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot like what we do. I mean, what the Turner Foundation does in our apartment complexes. I mean, after school support.
Yeah.
And I've read that where kids spend that after school to dark window is hugely important in terms of juvenile delinquency statistics. That if there's a safe place to go where there's positive stuff going on versus the alternative. Yeah. So that's a major thing.
Yeah.
And that's, you said 5th through
12th grade.
5th through 12th grade. Wow. So you guys really then support from 5th grade all the way up. I mean, in terms of the
So whatever's youngest, 5th grade or 12 years old, all the way to 18, because Noah's is 12 to 17. Okay. So.
Beautiful. Well, this is great. Wonderful work. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate it, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
See you next time.